We were at the tavern, explaining to the elves who had missed the last session, and the skeleton diplomat who we promised to assist with introducing his nation to Restus peacefully, explaining to them that the king was dead and it was sorta our fault. It was a, productive conversation, I suppose.
Why didn't you just not kill the king?
I didn't do nothing. He did.
It's weird how your nothing looks a lot like a dead monarch.
Dude had like 6 hit points. How did you want me to interfere?
Oh, I don't know. Don't send the multiple personality warlock to go help the king.
He's the only one with the spell. This went on for about 45 minutes in real life, including one moment where I was describing the plan as a fantastic plan, one might say the greatest plan to ever be proposed, and I got made fun of for using, quote, Trump hands as I spoke. So Cliff notes, Tyrus the Skelebro is magically disguising himself and wants nothing to do with our proposition to help him back to New Roma because we owe him. Aldrich Paladin went to go re-swear fealty and discovered that a fight broke out in the console and the prince fled. Every army in the region has been mobilized, and the Wraith attack is being blamed on New Roma, our allies who we were trying to help out with peaceful coexistence. Sanctus also sorta okayed the king's death, saying murder is wrong, but he didn't like the king as much as his son. The druid and warlock stopped at a magic item store where the druid cast detect magic and promptly vomited from overstimulation. They bought 1 health potion because no one pays you reward money for killing a king, and I remembered I had druid craft, so I produced a skunk smell in the paladin's helmet and promptly took 4 punching damage, which was totally worth it. Also, the paladin noticed something funny. Wait. Have you 2 knife years contributed anything?
Of course we have.
I seem to remember you not helping us in a fight in session 1, not breaking anyone free or helping in session 2, and getting drunk in session 3. Hey, for that matter, have any of us done a single good deed? So we eventually voted and decided to go the direction the prince fled to explain why New Roma wasn't responsible for the father's death since he's most likely to come out on top of the war. And Burning City. That's our fault. The druid cast Sleep Storm and cleared the fires in an instant while upsetting the cavalry of the clashing armies. We took a moment to assess the army and noticed one group had these super cool flame armor and these gnarly magic powers, but might have been killing a few civilians. And one was losing non-magical normal dudes, but aligned with our general goals, the prince we were working with, and morally weren't committing war crimes. So the battle starts with 2 civilians frantically trying to get out of the way of the knights. I brought my women and children trademark, minis. They aren't painted, but really help with the idea that a hostage is about to die. And they did, because we lost initiative and commoners have less HP than the king. In vengeance for the poor mother of who knows what, I swiftly fired 2 arrows in 6 seconds while celebrating my new class feature. They both missed, so then I fired another 2 arrows in the same 6 seconds because of action surge. And you know, fighter archery style comes with a +2 to hit, so I had a pretty good to hit bonus. And I guess that precision comes at the cost of just not working when it'd be really nice if it did. The druid was fast to pick up my slack by shooting a ray of frost which did hit and rolled high damage. The paladin charged forward and challenged one of the knights to single combat, and they began exchanging blows. The warlock flung a firebolt that rolled 1 away from max damage, turning one of them into ash in an instant. The bard did something bard-like that did psychic damage and gave me a bardic inspiration to help my next attempt to shoot. The enemy force began to march on us, but the ice from the druid's spell mastery made the terrain difficult, leaving all but the paladin safe. I fired an arrow with the bard's song lifting ice from my eyes, striking the one I'd missed before. I spoke a druidic word and poison dumped itself into his veins as vines sprouted around him, slowing his movement speed and dealing slashing damage if he moves without using an action to remove the vines. The druid shot another frosty bolt, harming a knight. The paladin shouted Deus Vult as his first foe's lifeblood turned to snow around him red. Bard shouted flee with magic lacing the words at the one eye had covered in thorny vines, and as he fled, the warlock finished his life with a cantrip. Quick pause for war crimes. This is an entirely meta discussion we had, no actual changes in the game yet. So, the reason we aren't supposed to strike fleeing enemies is because they are a mix of surrendering / out of the fight. In real life, if you want your would-be killers to be war criminals, you need to also throw down your arms so that you are definitely out of the fight, because the mere act of fleeing is not technically surrender, and having a gun means you are still very dangerous. In game, swords and shields have less range potential, making them almost certainly not in the fight when they run, and the DM says he decides game war crimes, not the Geneva suggestions. In this instance, we did in fact have a fleeing enemy, so we had 2 points that we got into an argument about being potential war crime. The first were my vines. I explained that if I shot you with an arrow, then you fled, and I do nothing else but you bleed out, no one is going to argue that I attacked a fleeing man, even though my arrow did damage after the fleeing started. And this is very much the same. My reasoning was accepted as far as I can tell. The warlock is slightly different, so hear me out. If the reason your enemy is fleeing is because of magical compulsion that lasts 6 seconds, you have no reason to actually believe he is out of the fight, because he still has his action, so he could shoot a bow or throw a javelin backwards the same turn, and even if he didn't, I think he is about to do a little walk in the other direction to continue fighting the second the spell passes. So while he shot a fleeing enemy, I think it's fully justified. The DM doesn't seem to agree, but I figure I'd check what the internet thinks, because we argued about this for maybe 20 minutes and I ran by some non-D&D players and got a surprisingly wide variety of opinions. The final night was going blow by blow, carefully trying to outmaneuver the terrifying paladin. I had notched an arrow when the paladin shouted that he didn't want aid. We all just kind of sat there as the paladin had his honor-bound duel and the druid passed out nuts, which we munched on. Then the final knight was decapitated. Now we have done at least one non-evil deed. We met with the prince's knights and were even introduced to the prince himself. Most of us, the 2 of them already met him. All but the warlock kneeled, which is not a good look. Luckily, he didn't know the nature of the wraith, and the conversation went a little something like this. Neuroma's wraith killed my father. Actually, the guard killed your father. That doesn't make sense. I mean, the wraith from the southern nation that already doesn't like you killed your father. Well, I guess they expanded their spellcasting capacity. Thank you for letting me know, my scout that has no reason to be aware that this happened. I will invade that nation after I re-establish control over Ressus. And before you say anything, the southern nation is probably evil according to the DM, you know, like the skeleton nation. Moving on, we decided that the best course of action would be to get the prince back to the capital and into the church. If we succeed, he would be able to claim sanctuary and get sworn in as king, giving him a lot more legitimacy and resources to fight the snowballing civil war. We had to leave behind the army to minimize the risk of being seen because this was a stealth mission. Our druid used a rather potent spell to hide our noises and footsteps, pass without a trace, which gives us a plus 10 to stealth. I rolled a 33, becoming the one dwarf that has ever shut up. We dodged, I think, 3 potential encounters where they rolled a perception check against our lowest stealth before we saw the temple doors and were spotted by those tasked with stopping the prince's entry. I could describe the battle to you in great detail, but it was pretty fast. I used my bursting arrow to deal damage in a radius, harming most of them. Then the warlock conjured a fireball, bringing my harm to lethal damage, with the survivors deciding to surrender to us. The prince became the king, and for the second time this campaign, we did a good deed.